There's a reason myths endure, and it's not because they stay the same. In fact, it's because they don't. Every generation sharpens them, softens them, or recasts them in new shadows. The gods of old are reborn with new masks, new sins, and additional layers. And comic book heroes are no different. When a character has been around for nearly a century, change isn't inevitable, it's essential. Superman can't remain the Kansas farm boy he was in 1938, and Batman can't forever be the silent wraith of the night. To keep these figures alive, and truly alive, they have to be reimagined, reinterpreted, sometimes even broken apart and rebuilt into something unfamiliar. And that's not betrayal of tradition, it's a conversation with it. Reinvention keeps these characters relevant, not just to the culture around them, but to the questions we're still asking. Like, who deserves power? What is justice? Can anyone be trusted to do good in a world that keeps changing its definition of evil? And those are the questions that Alan Burnett and Bruce Timm set out to answer with their direct-to-DVD movie Justice League: Gods and Monsters, which was released in July of 2015, although it didn't quite get the response that the creators had hoped for. If you're a fan of superhero animation over the last 35 years, then you should be familiar with the work of Bruce Timm and Alan Burnett. Bruce Timm is arguably the most influential figure in modern American animation, and while Alan Burnett may be less famous, he is just as significant. The pair were some of the key architects of the DC animated universe, which consists of shows like Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, and the 2 Justice League shows. While Bruce Timm handled the art style, it was Burnett that headed up the writing teams, and it's really that fusion of the two sensibilities, as well as the teams they assembled beneath them, that defined these shows. By the time of Gods and Monsters' release, the pair had been working on DC shows for almost 25 years, so you can imagine that they might feel the need to freshen things up. The way they achieved this was to set their film in a different universe, a place where the heroes were less clean-cut and the world was a generally more unpleasant place. While the heroes had familiar codenames, they were very different people. Their Superman wasn't Clark Kent, the Midwestern farm boy, he was Lor Zod, the son of Superman villain General Zod. Their Batman wasn't billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne, he was vampire cancer patient Kirk Langstrom. And their Wonder Woman wasn't Diana Prince, she was Becca, a new god on the run from the murderous High Father of New Genesis. This was generally a very good approach to take. One of the questions at the core of the film relates to power and accountability, as well as corruption, deception, and envy. While the Justice League only consists of 3 people, there isn't a force on Earth that can stand against them, and the public's reaction is mixed. Some see them as protectors, others as tyrants. Their base of operations is a tower in the centre of Metropolis where they hover above the people looking down on them. They claim to want to do good and support the US government in their ambitions, but it's very clear that their relationship is strained. They kill to maintain control, preserving a fragile status quo that keeps them at the top. But when America's greatest scientists start turning up dead, and it seems like this league are responsible, things escalate. Now, I'm not really interested in recounting the events of the film scene for scene, but if you haven't watched the film, I recommend doing so before continuing with this video. I'm going to spoil some things while I discuss what I like about it. So first things first, let's talk about the new Justice League and these wildly different takes on classic heroes. I think that Timm and Burnett were probably aware that significant changes like this would not go down well if they were to replace what had come before. So they set their film in a different universe where it could be its own thing. This film has a lot to say about power and corruption, and it's particularly evident in the backstories for Superman and Wonder Woman. There's been a lot of discourse recently around Superman's status as an immigrant from the stars, and Burnett really makes it obvious by having Superman be raised by illegal immigrants in Arizona with the civilian name Hernan Guerra. One part of his character that I really enjoyed was how he was pretty optimistic. This is demonstrated through his understanding of his conception. The ship that brought him to Earth had a recording of the final moments of Krypton, where Zod is shown providing his DNA to create his son and send him off into space. There's no audio, so Superman interprets the footage with a hopeful heart, projecting nobility onto the man he sees. He chooses to believe Zod was a hero, whose warnings about Krypton's fate were ignored by his people. But we know better. Zod was Krypton's executioner, not its saviour, and his son was conceived through a violent act. And this raises some very interesting questions about nature versus nurture. He is undeniably the son of a violent tyrant, a man who violated both his people and the sanctity of life itself. However, he was raised by a kindly immigrant couple who instilled some decency in him. I feel like this contradiction defines him. Hernan is the child of a tyrant and the product of a kind immigrant household. He kills without hesitation, but never without conscience. It's that contradiction more than any crest on his chest that defines him. Krypton was destroyed by Zod's corruption and complacency, and this also birthed Superman. And speaking of corruption, it also plays a significant role in the creation of Wonder Woman. She isn't an Amazon from Paradise Island, she's a god from New Genesis. In the mainline universe, New Genesis is presented as a peaceful and idyllic planet, home to the new gods. However, their neighbouring planet, Apokolips, is at war with them, and it is the literal personification of hell. A peace pact was negotiated between Apokolips and New Genesis with the exchange of the leaders' sons. Highfather's son, Scott-Free, was handed over to Darkseid to be raised on Apokolips, while Darkseid's son, Orion, was given to New Genesis. But that doesn't happen in this world. Instead of the traditional child exchange, peace here comes via marriage. Becca, granddaughter of Highfather, marries Orion, but the ceremony is a ruse, a divine ambush that leaves the gods of Apokolips murdered and Becca betrayed. It's a reversal of cosmic roles. New Genesis acts like Apokolips, and Wonder Woman is born not of prayer and clay, but of guilt and God's lies. Of the three heroes, Becca is probably the most well-rounded and emotionally balanced. She only lashes out in anger when Steve Trevor, her sometimes boyfriend, references the death of Orion, and she makes it clear that she is not to be reminded of her loss again. By the film's conclusion, Becca has accepted that she needs to face her trauma, and she returns to New Genesis. What happens to her remains a mystery. This leaves their Batman, Kirk Langstrom, who in most other universes is the villain Man-Bat, but here he is the monstrous defender of Gotham who preys on the wicked. Langstrom was a brilliant young scientist racing against his own terminal diagnosis, but in trying to conquer death, he was cursed with something significantly worse. His cure, based on bat DNA infused with Will Magnus's nanotech, doesn't just save his life, it damns it. Langstrom becomes a literal monster, and yet, unlike other Batmen, his crusade isn't about vengeance. It's damage control. He's not at war with crime, he's at war with himself. As Batman, Langstrom isn't acting to fulfill a vow, there are no dead parents to avenge, he's just trying to make the most of a bad situation. He doesn't seem too beat up about being a blood-sucking monster. No, he argues that he's only killing bad people as if he's doing the world a favour. Instead, he's defined by his longing for Magnus's wife, Tina. Now, the big spoiler here is that Will Magnus and his metal men are the villains of the film. Magnus believed that Tina had always loved Langstrom and only married him out of a sense of obligation. Magnus's jealousy of Langstrom, despite his awful fate, fuels the conflict in this film. He hadn't intended to turn Langstrom into a monster, in fact he urged him not to test the formula on himself. But his inability to save his friend, despite his vast intellect, ruined his marriage. Tina was furious with him for what he had done to Langstrom, and in a moment of rage, he struck her. She fell, with her head hitting the corner of a table, killing her instantly. And in his grief, he did what a god would. He replaced her, not with a new partner, but with Platinum, one of his metal men who would act as an obedient, soulless replacement. In the mainline universe, Will Magnus and his metal men were a bright, shining example of the Silver Age of comics sensibilities, adventurous and fun, so seeing them twisted into this dark, murderous, inhumane reflection is pretty bold. These radical reinventions of characters remind me of DC's current Absolute line of comics, where new versions of heroes live in a cruel universe that has been created by Darkseid. It's a similarly corrupt world where the wicked have all the power and the heroes are at an immediate disadvantage, battling against very real-world issues like climate disaster, corrupt billionaires, and the manipulation of ordinary people through misinformation. The Absolute line of comics are intended to reflect the kinds of problems we face in this day and age. And cheap plug time, if you want to hear more about these comics, head over to my second channel, Serum Lake Comics, where I've discussed every issue to date. I've included a link in the info button as well as this video's description. While not exactly the same, it's a similar thought process that Timm and Burnett likely underwent when working on this film. Justice League: Gods and Monsters was a film that asked uncomfortable questions at a time when audiences were still craving comfort. Back in 2015, superhero stories were reaching the height of their cinematic optimism. Shared universes were forming, icons were being polished, and hope was in high demand. But Timm and Burnett offered something different, something darker, something truer. But maybe it was a little premature. They stripped away the familiar capes and creeds, not to mock them, but to test their strength. What makes a hero when you take away the symbol on their chests? What happens when justice isn't delivered by paragons, but by flawed people trying to outrun their pasts? The film gave us a Superman born from violence, a Batman driven by bloodlust, and a Wonder Woman haunted by betrayal. And it asked us to look past the blood and the wreckage to see what still remained: empathy, loyalty, conscience, and love. In that sense, Gods and Monsters didn't abandon the core of DC's mythology, it reforged it, just as the Absolute comics are doing now, tearing down preconceived notions to build something bolder, stranger, and maybe even more relevant. Because the truth is, these characters don't endure because they stay the same. They endure because they change with us, reflecting back our fears, our failures, and our fleeting hopes. And maybe 10 years later, we're finally ready to hear what this story has to say. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my channel members. Everyone who was a member at the time of this video's creation is listed on the screen right now. If you want to see your name amongst all these wonderful people, join the channel now. Next time, I'll be back on Friday to talk about an absurd Silver Age character who went through a dramatic reinvention in Batman Beyond. Yes, it's time to talk about Batman's best friend, Ace. And then next Monday I want to talk about a very memorable episode of Superman the Animated Series that explored the possibilities of a world where the Man of Steel tightened his grip on humanity following the death of a loved one. We're going to talk about Brave New Metropolis. Hope to see you then.